know this is a different world that we live in other than when some of us were smaller, but we still have to let our children know to be safe. They have to be responsible, because remember, when you kick them out the door, and I'm saying kick them out the door, when you open the door and they go to school, they're in another world. When they're on their way walking to school, they're on their own. On their way walking to school, they are on their own. They are by themselves. So we need to prepare them while they're by themselves to be responsible for them little selves, and to, like I said, to run, escape, however they can, but run. If they know somebody, they run. You know, if hey, you want some candy, take off running. You know, either way, go run. If someone is walking behind them, walk faster and possibly run. But instruct your child of that, embed that in their heads, because all these things I'm talking about are things that we need to be talking about this evening to our children. And maybe for the first couple of weeks, it might be a mandatory daily speech that you give. But whatever it takes to keep our children safe, we need to do it as parents, as guardians, big brothers, big sisters, uncles, aunts. We need to have these conversations with our kids, because the more we have the conversation, the more we embed it into their brains, the most likely that they keep it. So we're going to switch subjects, and we're going to talk about something that happened a long time ago. Long time ago, like 400 years ago. Okay, so I don't know if you follow history as much as I guess some of us do, and I guess I do. I'm a big history person. I love history, and I love Black history, because our history is so vivid and it's so heavy. But 400 years ago this month, I know, in August of 1619, a ship appeared on this horizon near Port Comfort, a coastal port of the British colony of Virginia. It carried more than 20 enslaved Africans who were sold to the colonists. No aspect of the country. They didn't know where they were going or nothing like that. But they were, slaves. They were, like I said, they were purchased, coming to a land they didn't know nothing about. But it happened 400 years ago, and it happened last week. So last week was a celebration week. Not a celebration. It was an anniversary of slavery, of the beginning of slavery. I don't know if you all know that the first slaves did come through Virginia. And at that time, we need to know that was the first port that they came to. And in our history, that was very, imagine that was a big, huge turning point for Africans at that time, because we had been living in our own land, controlling our own place, controlling our own what we're doing, our own food, destination, language, and everything else, only to then, at a later time, to be sold and conned into slavery. Well, it happened, like I said, 400 years ago this week. Right now in Ghana, you have the CEO of NAACP, Mr. Derrick Johnson, and a delegation of people. And from Texas, you have our Senator, Royce West, who's running for election for United States Senator. He took a week off, actually it's 2 weeks off from his campaign trail. He's also in Ghana, and what they're doing is not celebrating, but they're talking about what happened at that time. Because for us, for Africans, that was not a great time. That was a time of a nonsense going on. And it says our democracy and founding ideals were false when they were written. Black Americans have fought for them. We have fought to make it true, to make our history true. We're always told that we need to forget slavery. And my question is, why should we forget slavery when you all remember the Holocaust? We made movies about the Holocaust, and actually people went. But when you make a movie about slavery, nobody goes, because we're told to forget it. I believe that we're told to forget it because we did it. Holocaust, we didn't do that. It was somebody else. That was Hitler and his other buddies. So it was okay for us to remember that, but we always want to tell everybody to forget slavery. And it said, if you want to understand the brutality of American capitalism, you have to start on the plantation, which is true. You got to remember that those first 20 people who got here were sold. And they were forced into trauma, they were forced to not believe in themselves anymore, but they had to once believe their oppressors, who are slave owners. They had to go into myths of things that did not or were not true. They had to realize that no longer were they a people. They were an item, an own chattel. And I don't know if you know or not, but slave oppressors had insurance on their slaves because they were own chattel, they were own property. So they not only had slaves, but they insured them. They had to go. They also were given a different Bible. What they did was they took the Bible and they tore it apart and remade it into certain passages to make them believe that slavery was supposed to happen because it was part of the Bible. And that's when they told Africans that when they had to die to be free, because they took passages out of a Bible, and later it became the Black Bible. In fact, you can order one on Amazon. It let them know that they were no longer a people. That, like I said, that they were own chattel, and that's what they were taught to do. They came from some of them. They came from Senegal. Later, they sent slaves to South Carolina, and those slaves were there. There was more than 20 slaves sent to South Carolina at that time. But during the first part of slavery, they only sent them a few at a time. They didn't go as they did later on. And later on, they stopped buying slaves. They started capturing them. The first part, they were buying them, but they were buying them out of what you want to call it, foolery and being duped and traded and traded. They traded goods for slaves at the time. Africa did that to some of their people, because at that time Africa is, and it was just like any other place, that people don't care about and people they do. So the first group of people, they traded for items. They traded for items that Africa didn't really need or use, but they traded them for items. And later on, it just became out and out, we're going to take some. Not all continents of Africa were slaves, where slaves came from. They did not. So don't think the slaves came from all over Africa. They didn't. Certain areas of Africa, nobody could go through because you weren't going to live long enough to get through there. So certain areas of Africa, there was no, slavery didn't happen. But like I said, it happened 400 years ago this month, and they tagged down the date to find out that it was last week. So last week was a big, huge, I guess, homage played, and it was in Ghana. And like I said, you have a lot of people went. I think total of 20 something people went there, and they're still there. They haven't came back yet, but they're there to talk about what happened. To talk about how this began and where do we and have we went any further as of yet. And why is it still going on today? Because slavery still goes on, and some people will say, that it was, because people blame it on the war, which is, you got to remember, slavery was before the war. So I don't know how they got that there, but slavery gave, Americans, white Americans, the fear of black people. It let them know that they were told that we were savages and they need to be scared of us. Which, guess what? Still mindset of some today, of those who don't look like us. Still the mindset today is that we're savages and violent people, and the prison system is still defining African Americans as, I even don't like saying it, but as violent people, who were once own chattel. We remember they remind us of that. We're reminded of that at that time, of who we were considered to be and everything like that. But that was a time of confusion, and it was a time that most of us would remember that we don't want to remember what that was. We don't want to know what it was, but we need to understand what slavery is, and we need to understand that it did happen. I'm not saying that we got to like it. No, we don't have to like it. But we need to know about it. And why? Because it's our history. A lot of people are wishing that we wouldn't pay attention to our history, that we will forget it. But we can't forget it because that's where we came from. And as much as you want to say it wasn't that bad, I think it was bad. As much as we want to say we need to forget it, well, no, you know why? Because when you forget things, you're doomed to repeat it. When you forget it and push it away, then you're doomed to repeat it, no matter what. No matter what it is, when you don't realize it and understand where it came from, what it was about and why, then it can be repeated upon us again, and we will not know what happened without remembering and realizing the mindset. And right now, I'll say the mindset is the same. Police officers today, not all police are bad, but some of the crazy police officers, guess what? Let's step back. Remember, police officers came together and they were put together, and I guess they invented. And the first job of police officers were slave hunters. Your first police officers, they were slave hunters. That was their job. That was their job. They were slave hunters. They weren't called policemen at the time, but they policed people, and that's what they did. But they were slave hunters at that time. Their job was to hunt, bring down slaves, bring them back. And if they couldn't bring them back, they killed them. So some of our police officers today are doing what? Some of the police officers today are going back to what they were originally brought together to do. Think about it. Just think about it. Think about it when they're, all they got to do is say, I'm in fear of my life. Not all police. I'll say it again. Not all policemen, but they say fear of life and they can shoot you. Right. And so you would think that some of the police officers, the only people they were afraid of aren't white. They're black. You got white kids who are shooting up things, and they get to go to Burger King before they go to jail. I don't remember them doing it for anybody that was African American. And for people now to say still that, African Americans are savages and are cruelty, but I've never seen so far an African American shoot up a school, shoot up a church, shoot up a gambling place. I've never seen none of us do any of these horrible things that have been done. I've never seen any of us drive so many miles away to go to El Paso to shoot up a bunch of people. We don't do that. But yet we're the savages. And that word goes back to when African Americans were slaves, which means people haven't changed their mindset. So why should we change and not know our history if some of the mindset has not changed? You see, so if we were to forget our history and let the mindset of today keep on, we will believe that we're savages. We will believe that. We really would believe that. By most of us knowing our history, either by force, because, some of us got to learn by force, or learning it, we learned that we're not the ones, and we learned that what's going on is just a transition of mind. It means, because kids aren't born to be killers. Kids aren't born to hate. Kids aren't born that way. They're taught that. They're taught it, and they listen to it, and it becomes part of their life, and they end up doing it. But we need to know, amongst time of slavery, most of the inventions that were done were made by slaves. A lot of the things that made things comfortable for today were made by slaves. In Africa, we had some of the best doctors in the world. We had them. We were the best of everything in the world. The best mathematicians in the world were from Africa. And you got to remember, if you read certain things, you realize that they all came from Africa. So Africa produced more than just people who were stolen to be slaves. A lot more. But we need to learn our history, and we need to learn about this 400 years ago, what happened. We need to understand what happened. We need to understand the why, and we need to understand that, guess what? We survived. We're the only people who can say we survived. No one else can say that. Nobody else can say we went through all of this, yet we still survived. We're still here. We didn't go anywhere. We need to know that we're not going anywhere, and we're still here. But by all means, learn your history. Learn about these 400 years. Read about it. Read about the segregation part. Read about the good parts of it. You say the good parts of slavery? Well, guess what? I'm going to tell you something that we don't realize. We see the Nation of Islam. The guys wear bow ties, right? So you would associate the bow ties with Nation of Islam, correct? So if I asked you where bow ties come from, some of you would say the Nation of Islam. Yeah, you would. You would. And guess what? I would have too, till I learned better. But, during the times of slavery, there were some who came to the United States. Some Africans came to the United States, but they had money. They had money, so they bought their way here. They came here and they bought their way to the United States. And to distinguish themselves from slaves, they wore bow ties. And they were called the dandy men. The dandy men. So the dandy men wore bow ties to distinguish themselves from slaves, to let everybody know they were free. But guess what? The dandy men weren't crazy either. They weren't ignorant either. They found other runaway slaves, and guess what they did? Cleaned them up, got them ready, and put them on a bow tie. Because that bow tie meant they bought their freedom. You see, so they know how to play the game. They started that game. They learned to play it. So they took a lot of men, cleaned them up, dressed them up, put on that famous bow tie. That bow tie meant you had money and you bought your way here. So a lot of black men, black men, became dandy men. And that's where the bow ties came from. So when you see a man wearing a bow tie, it doesn't mean he's a Muslim. Just think of the history of that bow tie now. The dandy men wore bow ties. So you got to think about it. That was another creation by hosts, by Africans. They created that to distinguish themselves so that the oppressors would understand and know we paid our way here. That's how we got here. But what did they do? They took that same mentality, switched it around, and gave it to a bunch of other men who became dandy men that had no money. They have not died, but they became dandy men by wearing the bow tie. So, yes, out of slavery was terrible and horrible, but there were some good things that happened, such as that. There was some, and I'm not going to say positive, but that was good. Because that one action, just think how many men walked around as dandy men. And it was in the state of Maryland, which is where the dandy men became dandy men. And then it did spread all out. But like I said, they had a name, and they were the dandy men. They named themselves. But like I said, they were slaves they were never slaves. They were men who bought their way here. And then what they did was use that and made sure other slaves were no longer slaves, that they were dandy men. So there were times of slavery when we showed that, even though we were down under some of us, we showed them that the rest of us helped out. So you know what I'm saying to us now? Just remember, the dandy men took other men who were slaves and put them on the bow tie to allow them to be free just like they were. But what are we doing it now? Are we really doing that? Are we taking what the dandy men did and taught us and using it now? We're not, and we need to. So when you see a man with a bow tie, don't automatically associate him with being Nation of Islam. Think about the dandy men who wore the bow ties first. So you know what, men? You might want to one day get up and go get a bow tie to understand the whole thing of what was going on with the dandy men back during the times of slavery. So just think about it, and also, I'll say as today, 2019, we have a couple of our, I'll say our legislators, our congressmen actually, and our lovely people that we put in power. Lovely people, I'm saying, we put in power. They're going back and they're letting us know that slavery still exists. It is one of our elected officials, not in Texas. He's not a Texas elected official, thank heavens. But he's also put it in print when he read the article. And think about it, he read the whole thing. He read the entire article. It's in the New York Times, so you can go to the New York Times and read about it. And it's called the 1619 Project. And like I said, it was written in the New York Times. But if you go back and you look at it and you read it, another section of the article, one of our United States elected officials, he goes on to let you know not to really pay attention to that. He goes on to let you know that slavery still exists today. So he's downplaying the entire part of what happened, which is normal. We expect that. If we didn't, something would be wrong. But he's kind of downplaying it, and he's downplaying it by letting us know that slavery still exists. It still exists today. So, what are we talking about? So I don't really think he gets the gist of what we were talking about. I don't think he gets it for him to make that kind of comment. I don't think he got it. I don't think he understands it. And I did read everything that he said. I read the entire article that he wrote because I was curious as to what the heck was he saying and was it going to make any sense to me? No, it didn't. It didn't make any sense. But you know what? My thing is, one, he read the whole article. And by him reading the whole article, he understood what the article said. He understood the depth and the definition of the article. So he knew he had to do what he had to do. And what I'm saying, that is, he knew he had to be the first one, the one out there, to actually say that something's wrong with this article. He has to be the one to say, no, we shouldn't, no, we're not going to buy into this. He's the one that's going to say, he's the one who said slavery still exists today. So he's taking one article, and he's downplaying it by saying that it wasn't that important, it wasn't that significant, and it's not necessary for us to remember it. You know, when somebody says something like that, to me, that's a red flag. And guess what? Just because you said I shouldn't remember it, I'm going to remember it. Just because you said I should forget it, I'm going to remember it. Because we have to. And we got to be careful when people tell us to forget something that's ours. And that's our history. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, because they aren't. We do have people who, understand our history, and not to say they feel bad about it, but they understand our history and they understand that it happened. And they're ones who will be with us into the fight and not against us in the fight. So I don't want everybody to walk away saying, oh my God, nobody's on our side. No, that's not true. That isn't true. We have people that are on our side. We have people that are on the side of the right. So I'm not going to say they're not on our side, but they're on the side of the right. Because there's a side of the right and there's a side of the wrong. But the most important thing is that you know your history. And we need to understand our history. And proud part of our history is that we survived it. That's the important thing, is we survived it. And the other part of it is we survived it. And as long as we understand it, we're not going to go back to it. Now, is America going backwards in some way? Yes. We have concentration camps right now. And I'll call them concentration camps because guess what? We have a bunch of people who are here who are held against their will. And what I mean by against their will is when they get up in the morning, it's controlled. Their day is controlled. Taking a shower is controlled. Eating is controlled. Do you have a change of clothes is controlled. There's no television. There's no, Mom, you cooking breakfast right now? No, that doesn't happen either. So guess what? We have stepped back. Think about it. We stepped back. That's a step back. That's not a step forward. Because we're doing to people what we did years ago. Didn't we do this before with some other people years ago? Didn't the United States once again have concentration camps of other people? I think we did. But guess what? Due to not knowing your past, due to not understanding the past, we're repeating it right now. We are repeating what we forgot. Yes, the Mexicans weren't in our concentration camps then. They weren't. There was other people, but we had them. So we've forgotten about it. We forgot all about that. We forgot about that part of history, and now we're repeating it because we have concentration camps. And we have companies making money off of them. Because, before we had border guards. That's it. Just border guards. Now, you got companies that's opened up to hire more men and women to be border guards. So now this is a profit-making thing. I think it was like the last concentration camps we had. It's a profit-making game now. I'm not going to say the name of the store, but there's a store that most people shop at, starting with the letter W. They had a store in Brownsville, but they shut that store down. But guess what? Oops! They opened it up. And it's a concentration camp now. So that store, I didn't say the name, just starts with a W. That store now is making some money off of the back of people. So they're just think about it. The store that everybody runs to, can't wait to go there. I even know people who know the store back and forth. I don't know. I can't do that. But I got people who go there every day. They swear by this store. Oh my gosh. But you swearing by a store. I'm not saying don't go, but just think about it. You go into a store. They shut a store down in Brownsville because it wasn't making any money. But now they open that store back up, that building, because it's a big building. You got to figure it's a big building. And now they're making money off of the government because they're now hosting their own concentration camp. And remember, definition of a concentration camp are people who are held behind barbed wire and their life is controlled. Remember that their life is totally controlled. Everything about their life is controlled. The only thing they got freedom of is open their eyes. That's it. That's their freedom. They can open their eyes and they can walk. That's it. Everything else is controlled. So this one company that we all love and can't stay away from is making money off of people. Now we need to remember, not all the people in this quote unquote, I'm saying concentration camps are Mexican. Remember that. There's some Africans in there, some African Americans in there too. Because, you know, those of us who come from other countries aren't United States citizens. Jamaicans aren't United States citizens. You gotta remember that. Jamaican is not United States citizen. Africans aren't United States citizens. But it's a division thing. Africans from Liberia are United States citizens, but the rest are not. So as we think of these concentration camps, you gotta think of who's in there. But you also got to remember that if we don't know our past, we're doomed to repeat it. And right now, we're repeating it. And we're repeating it, and we're not saying nothing about it. We need to know. That's the important part of learning history, is that you don't. Because if you don't know it, you're doomed to repeat it. We're repeating it right now. So how much farther in repeating it are we going to go? How much farther are we going to go? When are we going to stop this? We're in control of it, actually. Now, this time, we're in control of it. Last times it happened, we weren't really in control because we didn't know what the heck was going on. Now we are in control. So it's time for us to do something about it. And there's only one way you can fix it. One way. It's that word. It's a 4-letter word, and it's called vote. So if we like this, keep this whole regime in. If you don't like it, vote them out. Remember, see, before we didn't have the power of the ballot box with all these other things, but now we got the power of that thing called voting. So if you want to change things, you got to get up, you got to get out, and you got to vote. 2020, you got to vote. 2020, drag everybody out to vote. For real, just drag everybody. Everybody got to go. Everybody got to go, because look what we have right now. We have a government that doesn't care about people because we have concentration camps. We've hired other people to do this. Just think now, we have a office and staff right now that out of all of these regime people, they lost 1,500 kids. They just lost them. Just lost them. Just boom, lost. You know, so I want to know how you lose 1,500 kids. I know what you could have did with them. To me, you probably sold them to sex trafficking, because I don't understand how you lose. Not okay, you know, I'll grant it. In the system, you can lose somebody in the system. But how do you physically lose 1,500 kids? But so just think, 1,500 kids right now lost. They're gone. They don't know where they are. How do you lose 1,500 people? How? I mean, it's hard enough to remember you losing one. You lost 1,500, and guess what? Is anybody looking for them? No, we're not. So please, one, learn your past, so we won't have to repeat it like we are now, because remember that. And two, next year, 2020, I want you to vote twice, 3, 4, 4, 5 times. But also, you need to remember too, this year in November is the constitutional election in Texas. Pay attention to the constitutions of what they want to change. If you don't look at it, you know what's going to happen. So be informed, read it. It'll be online in September. You'll find out what all the 10 constitutional amendments they want to change and create or whatever. Pay attention to them. By all means, wake up, start reading, start listening, start remembering, and you need to go and vote. I want to thank you for listening to KISS Community Connections this morning. I hope you learned a whole lot. I gave you a bunch of homework assignments, a bunch of them, but they're all good. But I want you to always remember, you cannot lead a positive life with a negative mind. We'll talk to you next Sunday. Bye now.